On September 11th, 1975, just as the Golden Glow melted into the boulevards of California, Professor Claude Snelling was shot in front of his daughter in his home. This deadly act would initiate an investigation spanning 13 murders and 50 accounts of rape from 1975 to 1986. An investigation that, it would seem, would remain cold forever. This is the Golden State Killer. In February 1978, the Golden State Killer shot and killed Brian and then Katie Maggiore as she ran for help. This is evidence of a pattern of crimes to often
attack couples, tie them up, rape the female, then murder them,
according to the FBI. Burglaries continued in the East Bay area and soon escalated into rapes and murders by 1978. On December 30th, 1979, Deborah Manning and Robert Offerman were killed in Goleta near Santa Barbara. March 1980, Lyman and Charlene Smith were found murdered next to their 12-year-old son in their Ventura home. August 1980, Keith and Patrice Harrington were slain in their home in Dana Point in Southern California. February 1981, 28-year-old Manuela Witten was bound, raped and bludgeoned to death while home alone in Irvine in South California. July 1981, Sherry Domingo and Gregory Sanchez were killed in Goleta. But then, nothing. From July 1981 to May 1986, no crimes were attributed to the Golden State Killer, and the question turned from where will he strike next to where was he? It was in 1973 that a string of Visalia burglaries were attributed to a prowler who would be known as the Visalia Ransacker. He broke into homes, opened drawers, and often left strange personal trinkets behind. His nefarious activities continued up to 1975, when he fatally shot a man who had tried to protect his daughter, Professor Claude Snelling. Was this the same person later be known as the Golden State Killer? The detectives at the time had no clue. In Sacramento, a new killer was emerging, the East Area Rapist. His methods were also similar, stalking neighborhoods, tying up couples, raping women. The timing was coincidental. Some thought the Visalia Ransacker had just come north. Others argued they were two different offenders. Suspicion had once fallen on a local man, Oscar Clifton, who was convicted of murdering a 14-year-old girl near Visalia in 1975. Was the ransacker Clifton? Had the police already caught their attacker? But Clifton was in prison when the Sacramento rapes began. If he was in prison, how could the crimes continue? That contradiction cast doubt on the conviction and made detectives anxious. At the same time, in Southern California, another nickname emerged, the original Night Stalker. This assailant broke into homes, raped couples, and killed with sadistic efficiency. Others wondered if it could be the same East Area Rapist. But police then were balkanized, working county by county, often unwilling to exchange information. To most, these seemed like three different criminals. Then, in July 1981, the Golden State Killer seemed to have appeased his thirst for blood. He disappeared from the news and seemingly vanished. Had he simply decided that was enough? Had one of the most prolific criminals in American history just stopped? Police had already considered a number of suspects, such as Brett Glasby from Goleta. Santa Barbara County investigators believed him to be a prime suspect for the Golden State Killer. Could this be the man who had already terrorized California for 8 years? But then, in May 1986, the Golden State Killer struck again. Janelle Cruz was bound, raped, and bludgeoned to death in her home, prompting yet another round of investigations into the Golden State Killer. Brett Glasby was no longer considered a suspect, as he had been murdered in Mexico in 1982. With the methodical methods of the killer and almost no evidence, police were at their wits' end. Investigators posited that perhaps the murderer was frightened of being caught. Earlier that same year that the Golden State Killer stopped killing, Colin Pitchfork became the first man to be convicted by DNA evidence. Given that the Golden State Killer's MO tended to leave plenty of DNA on the scene, his calculating mind assessed the situation and deemed that the risk of conviction was too high to conceivably think they may get away with murder. And while the police may have plenty of DNA belonging to the Golden State Killer, without any matches in any databases, investigators had no way to convict anyone. And this is the state that the case remained until 2016, when the FBI reopened the case with further genetic tools under their belts, in particular genetic genealogy. We now talk to an expert in the field to understand how this helped investigators charge the Golden State Killer.
Genetic genealogy is the art of constructing family trees from partial DNA matches. Related members of a family share sequences of DNA, and by analysing the similarity of two samples of DNA, one may understand how related they are. As a forensic tool, we on the Golden State Killer case were able to compare DNA gathered on the scenes of the crime to DNA in the CODIS database of the FBI and the GEDmatch public database, which contained millions of samples of DNA. At once, the investigation began to gather momentum, as two different individuals with a 1% correspondence with the killer's DNA, so that equates to about third cousins, and now that the police had two known data points, they could begin to determine the unknown and uncover the identity of the killer at last. The two third cousins chosen from the GEDmatch database were less similar to each other than they were to the killer's DNA, so investigators' first step was to identify the youngest common ancestor by trawling through birth certificates and other public databases. The two individuals ultimately shared a great-grandparent. Because of the similarities between these people and the killer, investigators had just found the identity of one of the killer's great-grandparents. From there, it began the simple but arduous task of mapping out every single descendant of the identified common ancestor, knowing for certain that one of them is the killer.
By narrowing down the search radius with eyewitness data collected from his numerous victims, investigators were able to shrink the pool of thousands of relatives down to 5 suspects. After collecting genetic data from each suspect via discarded tissues and fingerprints, investigators were able to generate a match. They had found the Golden State Killer at last. In a shocking turn of events, the man who had terrorized California for 13 years was revealed to be none other than Joseph James DeAngelo, a former member of the Exeter Police Department. A man who had sworn to uphold justice and enforce the law had been running rampant, committing countless burglaries, rapes, and even escalating to murder. Joseph James DeAngelo was placed in custody on the 24th of April, 2018, charged with numerous counts of first-degree murder and rape. One of the most prolific criminals in American history was just put to justice.